is up, ladies and gentlemen? We are back. We are live. It is the Freight Coach Podcast, the top podcast in transportation, coming to you guys every single weekday, 8:30 a.m. Pacific, 10:30 Central, to break down some industry headlines. But most importantly, you guys provide some actual insight into what you can do with all of this information. If this is your first time tuning in, welcome. This is the real side of freight, ladies and gentlemen. And I say that before every single show. And what I mean by that is I only speak with transportation professionals, because at the end of the day, you guys, I want to talk to the right individuals who have done what you're looking to do, or who are currently doing what you're trying to achieve, so you can take that information, apply it, utilize it, and see a meaningful difference in your business and your life. Happy Tuesday, everybody. Sorry we're a few minutes behind schedule. Your boy actually books freight as well on top of this, and that's what we got to do out here, you guys. We make stuff happen. And speaking of making stuff happen, my guest today, it's funny. I actually got to know him really right when I started creating content and doing all this stuff 5 years ago now. And it's kind of a full circle moment for me today. I'm really looking forward to speaking with him and, his journey in the industry and, building up his company and everything. So with that being said, I have my man, Anthony Kokal, on the shore. Anthony, thank you so much for joining me.
Yeah, Chris, I appreciate you having me. Really excited to be here.
No, man, absolutely. It's like I said, it is a full circle moment. I remember, we used to talk, pretty frequently, kind of early on, and we were staying in touch about things. And dude, it's just great to have you here today.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. I don't do a lot of these things, and when the opportunity presented itself, I jumped because we met a while ago now with sort of this idea of what we were going to do, and sort of like taking over the world, right? Thinking in the brain style. And I think it's really cool to see what you've done. We've been sort of head down building, and has been a lot of fun along the way. So it's really cool to see it full circle of this is what we wanted to do, and oh man, we actually kind of did some of those things, which is cool.
Yeah. Dude, and that's the thing, man, is I feel like with a lot of stuff, Anthony, it is just starting. Most importantly, it's just starting, and it's just getting out there and just understanding that, like, it's going to take so much longer than you want. It's going to be so much harder than you think, but it is, dude, just breaking it down on a day-by-day basis and really attacking it that way. So before we get into any of that stuff, man, like, how'd you get your start in transportation, Anthony? What brought you into the industry?
Yeah, so I mean, I'm pretty much a lifer, I guess you could say. I grew up in the space. My old man's probably got one of the older running brokerages that are out there. He's a mid-'80s start. So I've really grown up in the space. I still remember going to the post office on a Saturday morning, and he was collecting checks, or at least hopefully that there were some checks in the PO box. And it's funny, I remember him, he'd show me, one of the checks or something like that. Like, wow, that's a lot of money. Like we must be doing okay. And at the time I didn't realize that there was this thing called cost of goods sold and overhead and SG&A expenses. So it wasn't all take home pay, but, so I've been in and around it for my entire life. And, when I sort of came out of college, worked at a Big Four accounting firm, sort of getting some real world knowledge, so to speak. And then not soon after that, my brother had already started sort of a brokerage business, and just said, hey, I know we've talked about this, but we're growing, and it's time. So went over, joined him, and that's sort of where we came into it. And then maybe fast forward a couple of years when we met, we were sort of making some decisions about growth and where we were going. So sort of how I got here.
No, dude, I like. And that's the thing, man, is it coming up and growing up in the industry, was your dad, like, did he tell you, like, hey, go try something else before you come into this?
So yes, he vehemently said, go be a doctor, be a lawyer, go do anything else, but this crazy business. But I think for us, it was just like, I saw the passion in what he did. And, he never missed any sporting event. My brother and I, we played a lot of years of football, even into college ball. He had 9 years of travel for weekends of even our college ball. Just never missed a thing. Did it all, sort of when he needed to do. He was remote, but it was really cool to see him sort of grind, right, and really was a respected person within the community, was a well-loved person in the community. And what he was able to do for his clients was just, sort of infatuating to me. So, I'm actually a CPA. I think I'm, inactive or whatever they call it now, but I always knew I was going to come back to this space. I wanted to gain some real experience so I could bring it back and sort of apply it within, our business use case. But I don't know, it's one of those things that once it's in your blood, it's in your blood, right?
Yeah, dude, that's the truth, man. Like I can't see myself doing anything but this at this point in my life, and just kind of like on the trajectory of where things are kind of trending and heading. It's man, I just have too much fun. And like, and I was talking to my wife about this last night. Like, I'd be miserable doing anything else, like I would, like I feel like I'm on the right trajectory to kind of make stuff happen and everything. And like, kind of like what I was saying. Yeah, it's taking longer than I had thought, but like, man, I have never felt more fulfilled than kind of where I'm at right now. And, so like, dude, well, how have you guys really been attacking these last couple of years? Because you guys have kind of taken on like, a rebrand, like a, different kind of growth trajectory and everything. So kind of like walk me through some of that.
Yeah. So I think, as we were talking about sort of getting into the industry, and really around the time that you and I sort of connected, Chris, that's when we started to make sort of decisions about what does this look like, right? We're having some success. It feels like it's a good thing. And, we're having a lot of fun doing it, but what does that mean? And I think that, we sort of sat down and had a conversation of, all right, are we a lifestyle business? Or are we a growth vehicle? And, I think, from the stakeholders within, our company, we didn't want to just be a, small, sort of like family run shop for the rest of our lives. So we said, listen, let's go at this thing. And I think at that point in time is when we looked at, we had a strong niche, within what we were sort of doing, a lot of like, mission critical sort of, high value, high priority freight, not terribly dissimilar to what you guys sort of play in. And so we had already had sort of something to say within that space. And I think that we took that and just made it more aggressive, right? We found ways to monetize, and one of the strategies was grow through M&A. We've done 2 transactions. I sort of set up our M&A strategy of what we look for, and I remember that's sort of one of the first conversations that we had. But we've done two deals since I think 2020, 2021, one in 21, one in 23, and that's been a really fantastic way of growing, and we've learned a lot through that experience. And we're enjoying it. And I think the organic side is really, really exciting, what we're working on today.
Yeah. It's how did you guys decide about kind of going down the acquisition route? Like I just had a guy yesterday on the show. We were talking about M&A inside of transportation this year. And it's kind of one of those things where, does it reach a certain point where you're like, hey, our growth, because if you just look at from like a customer acquisition strategy, out there right now, it's kind of slim pickings, like it's not what it used to be. So does it kind of get to that point where you're like, hey, let's buy an existing customer or buy an existing operation that has the footprint that we want, as opposed to us taking the route of just organically building it?
Yeah, so it's interesting. I think every business is a little bit different, right? Sort of the classic buy versus build, mentality of, what are we going to do? And I think for us, you look at your strengths, your weaknesses, and you figure out what's the best way to plug that. And I think what we set out to do was to build a robust platform of best in class niche service providers that we're able to cover various different parts of the industry in different ways. So Codis Transportation, which is Codis Holdings, and then underneath Codis Holdings is you've got Codis Transportation, freight brokerage that really plays in mission critical spaces. Solver, which is the entity that I run, which is like a location agnostic warehousing distribution company. We're all non-asset based, right? No assets to be had within our entity. And then we looked at those things and said, okay, where are our gaps, right? Mm-hmm. And then how do we fill that? And a lot of our gaps came from what our customers were naturally asking for, right? You say no enough to your customers, we don't do that. And it's like, all right, well, how about we find a way to say yes? And you look at it and say, is this value accretive? Is this something that makes sense? Does it dilute our margin profile? Does it dilute what our sort of like core principles are? And, I think from there we said, if there are businesses that are out there in the market, we want to have an opportunity to look at them. And, Standard Freight was the first deal that we did back in 21, sort of a specialty freight brokerage that does a lot of heavy equipment, pipeline construction, things of that nature. And then, really the most recent gap that we filled was more of a larger LTL and more traditional van and truckload player, but still specialty and end user markets within that space. So, in both of those instances, we looked and said there's value to be had with going out and buying these businesses. They made sense at the time, as opposed to building it from the ground up. It would have been way more labor intensive and capital intensive to do it ourselves.
Mm-hmm. Dude, because it's like, man, because just from like where I am in business, like I hear a lot of that stuff, man. And I'm also like, you probably you'll understand this more than most about like that beginning and that building stage of a lot of it. And, kind of the frustrations that come along with it, because when you put everything on the line, and when you do all of that, I kind of reach that decision of like, do we just invest in it? Do we take that risk? Do we buy existing systems and everything? And, one of the things that, a little habit I've picked up on is, reading books. Shocker, I know, but that is one of those things that they really talk about a lot in there. And it kind of sounds like you guys identified that, you guys have started rolling that out. Now, is this a long-term strategy for you guys, do you think, Anthony, where it's like, or is it like, hey, we know the companies that we would want to have them join the family here, and then we stick with that? Or are you guys exploring opportunities at all costs? And I understand that question might be kind of proprietary on your strategy, so you don't have to answer it, but it just kind of comes to mind there.
No, so I think for us, right, we're always talking about some very simple sort of like overarching themes, right? It's value creation, value expansion. It's paying attention and making sure that we're paying attention to execution risk, right? Spending time on the things that we should be spending time on, saying no to the things that we shouldn't be, working on. So I think for us, the strategy can change. It can change really, really quickly. I think, anybody that tells you that, you sort of like set it and forget it is crazy. You're not going to last too long. So you kind of have to take what the market gives you, right? If valuations are crazy high and we can build something, then that makes a lot of sense. If we can acquire a business that ultimately adds value, maybe in a low interest rate market or something like that, that makes sense as well. So I think for us, as long as we're adding value, whether it's organic business or inorganic business that adds to our bottom line, we're interested in doing it. So, pulling the veil a little bit back, I mean, we've always got something that's in the hopper, right? I think that if you have an M&A strategy, you want to have options, right? And who some of those businesses are that might add a lot of value to you, right? But that seller may not be ready to go, or maybe there's a partner that's not interested, or something of that nature. So I think the thing that people don't realize within sort of like the deal space and the M&A space is that there's a lot of things that take you to pencils down. A lot of different things that are out there. So just when you think you're on the goal line and you're about to punch it in, something crazy happens, and then all of a sudden you have to be ready to sort of hang it up and look around. So it's not an easy way of going about things, but we've got a really good stable full of folks in our corner helping us.
Yeah, it's man, I love hearing that response kind of from your seat, right? Because like I've had a lot of, like I said, I just had a guy yesterday on the show who, facilitates M&A and everything. And it's like, I know of a few other buddies of mine who have went out and acquired, businesses and stuff to kind of roll up inside of their company. And, it's interesting to hear that, from somebody who's, actually done it here recently, and somebody who doesn't really rule that out in the long term as a growth lever for their business. And I think like, that's one of those battles that allowed a lot of founders come in, especially in the, I always say it's the real world. And I say like the bootstrap kind of people who have built these businesses up, that weren't just given a check from venture or private equity to kind of go out there and build. Like, I'm talking the nuts and the bolts of it. It is that build versus buy thing. Like, what do we do here? At what point do we reach that? Or, because it's like customers are coming at us now with different requirements and different needs than kind of the old school way. So like, is it a strategic conversation that a lot of people should be having as you're going out there and looking to kind of grow over the next 24 to 36 months?
So I think one thing that, I see a lot of that my advice would be to, sort of sellers or business owners that are out there is to have a strategy and continuously reevaluate that strategy and make sure that you're moving along that path, right? If somebody calls you up today and says, "Hey, I'd like to buy your business," it's probably a good idea to have an answer back to that. Maybe it's, "I'm not ready, but I'm interested. Let's keep in touch," or whatever. But I think just really understanding what your strategy is, what your long-term strategy is, and then, there's what is it, a Kenny Rogers song, "You got to know when to hold them, know when to fold them." Right. So that actually, plays true. Sometimes it may not be the ideal time, right, in a seller's life or whatever it is, but when that door comes, when somebody comes knocking at the door and it's the right deal, it's a good idea to at least explore what that sort of option is. And that's, you talk a little bit about, raising capital versus bootstrapping versus a number of different ways to do it. I don't have a problem with the way that anybody does it. I think that if you know what your capital structure is, what the needs of your business are, there's a bunch of different ways to go out and do it. Some people have to build it and grow really, really fast. Others can do it a little bit more methodically. So there's always something in the middle there.
Dude, ain't that the truth, man? And I feel like, at least from my perspective, like I'm not ever anti, exploring all opportunities out there for growth inside of my business. Because like my main goal, Anthony, is it's freedom. And it's owning myself, right? Like that is my ultimate goal is I want to own me. All right. And I'm not saying like I'm not going to surround myself with smart people who can help me through a lot of situations. But when it boils down to it, at the end of the day, I don't want to have to answer to anybody. And, we all answer to somebody in the long run, right? Whether it's our customers and stuff like that. But like, I don't want somebody in my ear who's going to like essentially tell me, "No, you're doing this because I am the controlling interest of this organization. And this is just the way it's going to be." Call it whatever you want, but that's just the way that I want to approach this.
I think every entrepreneur has a little problem with authority, at least to some degree, right? You want to be able to control your own future. And, it's like going back to my old man, right? Do something else, do this, get out of this crazy industry. But, I think for me, it shaped a lot of the person that I am, right? To be able to, have a little bit, I don't take a lot of time off, even when I'm vacationing, I'm probably still active in what's going on, but, it affords me a lot of freedom to be, available to my family, which is, first and foremost, the most important thing. But it also, it keeps me moving, keeps me really active. When you feel like what you're getting out of the business, is a function of what you put into it, it's a lot easier to wake up in the morning and put your pants and your shoes on. I assume you probably got a shirt on as well, but it's a lot easier
all day.
you got to have the freight coach shirt on, right? So I think that's sort of like the mentality, and it's exciting for us, and I think it's really exciting to sit down across from somebody else that's been in this industry for a while, that's sort of having those conversations internally. So we're having fun doing it.
I love it, man. So, dude, how are like one thing I think, as I'm out there developing business, like I've used this line often. I want my customers to be able to look at their transportation or logistics spend as a growth lever for their organization, right? And that's one thing where it's like, I want them to be able to come back and be like, "Hey, I onboarded Chris in July, and then our profitability increased because of how he took care of our customers and stuff like that." So like, how are you guys going through that kind of, strategy, strategically thinking about how do we really separate ourselves out there?
Yeah, no, that's a really good question. I think that's something that you have to be almost maniacal about, as it pertains to, how you're presenting yourself to your customer, how you're aligning yourself. I think we talk about, aligned incentives a lot, right? It's one of those things that if we call them perverse incentives, right? If there's a misalignment between a customer and us or the vendor or whatever it is, that's a recipe for disaster. So I think for us, we sort of have an enterprise-wide approach, right? I don't want to necessarily say that we're, whale hunting, but, we have a different model, sort of a, enterprise model where we don't have a lot of sales reps. We have a lot of company top-down driven sales goals, and we like the larger clients that are mission critical. So I think for us, it's about finding the right partners, right? The folks that see value in what we're doing, and then you get into this sort of Goldilocks phase of alignment of incentives, and then even for us, we align some like the the social benefits of it, where what we do reduces miles traveled. It reduces, sort of touching, whatever the freight is, right? Because we take things from, purchase order, coming through the manufacturer, down in through maybe temporary storage, and ultimately all the way to, a job site, from a delivery standpoint. So all along that supply chain, you want to create value and make sure that you've got a sort of metrics driven approach to what your clients want. And I think for us, mission critical, high value, high priority freight, things where if you don't show up on time, it's a problem, right? Mm-hmm. Somebody's coming for liquidated damages, there's real upset.
Yeah, dude, it's it's a different world out there. And that's why it's another one of the reasons why I tell people to choose a niche and stay inside of said niche and really double down on that. Like, there's a lot of opportunity that's out there. I get the paralysis of like, well, we have to offer everything or nobody's going to want to work with us. And, I always try and tell people, again, take this for what it's worth. This is just somebody who's out there actively cold calling prospects and shippers every single day. The highest return on my outreach right now has been singular sales focus. It has not been how I was kind of brought up in this industry of, hey, offer everything, we can do everything. And then, that's different when you're working for a top 5 broker out there who literally has departments for everything. But, depending on the size of the organization that you're working for or the size of the organization that you're trying to build, I have just found a greater ROI from kind of that singular sales focus and really pushing that message out there about like, hey, I'm really just calling to A, introduce ourselves, B, do you use this, and C, if not, I'll take you off my list,
Yeah, and I think it's sort of like an old, jack of all trades, master of none. We subscribe to that, right? Anytime that you can specialize in something and really develop a name within a specific industry, it's a lot easier to, go and sell and put a white paper in front of somebody and say, hey, you're doing this. I've done my research. I know what you guys are building or what your plans are. We've done this. We think that aligns really well. And so it's a much easier conversation because it's not as much of a cold conversation. A lot of our sales come from, word of mouth, right? Just somebody saying, hey, we use these guys. You should use them as well. So I think that that's been, sort of a really helpful thing. And I think that when you don't specialize, you really run the risk of a lot of, trying something new, right? When you're not sure of how to grow, right? Say a brokerage hits $10-20 million in revenue. It's like, okay, well, how am I going to get to the next one, right? I'm listening to all these people out over the internet saying growth and this and that. How am I going to grow? And I think what I've seen through our M&A strategy, actually quite a bit, is that going after what we call indefensible, new revenue, right? So, we'll see the sort of like methodical growth, where somebody's built a business really well over the past, several years, and all of a sudden you have this huge spike in revenue, right? But you have this huge spike in revenue, and then you have this outsized investment, or it takes way more people to run it, or your SG&A and your overhead is way higher. So it's like, well, yeah, that's great. You went from $20 million to $30 million in top line revenue. So that's exciting stuff. But you actually were decreasing your value of your business because it wasn't something that increased at the same rate, right? As you grow, you should be able to remove some of that overhead, or at least ultimately rationalize it so that it grows in tandem, as opposed to growing where you're decreasing your expenses. So we see that a lot, and I think that those are the ones that have an issue with, where we an LTL company, or we a truckload company, or we open deck or closed. Pick something and start moving and working hard in it.
Yeah, dude, I'm right there with you, man, and I see that. It's like I just it to me, I look at the top 10. I just saw something the other week about the top 10 flatbed carriers that are out there, and they like cumulative, they're like $5 billion a year in revenue right there. Like, why do you need to do anything else? Like, honestly, there's so much opportunity that's inside of that vertical. Like, oh, you're telling me you're going to pass up $100 million a year company? No, you won't. So it's like, I just feel like for me, simplify, be able to do like, I'm just rambling here. You got to simplify your process so you can really streamline your operations and then amplify your outreach, right? Because it's so much more effective to go out there when you're selling on a core competency. And then from an operations and an execution standpoint, you want your people doing the exact same thing day in and day out. Because again, it's like, as technology improves and everything inside of this industry, you're going to be able to put out more with less at the end of the day. You're going to be able to put way more output out there. Like, dude, I just look at it back in the day, like we were booking 15 to 20 loads a day as one carrier rep, right? Like, but it was all 15 of the exact same weight commodity, all of that stuff. So it's like, I'm looking out there, I'm like, damn, man, I could probably hit like 30 or 40 a day with technology now, and I'm looking like, how do we stay lean? How do we make sure we have a system in place where all of our people remain profitable?
Yeah, and again, it's tough to do it, but I think once you gain some of those efficiencies, right? If you're an agent model, be the best agent model that you can be. If you're sort of an enterprise model, be the best that you can be at it. And I think for us, we like to go into situations where it's non-conforming, whether it's really, really high stakes of delivery, but it's all big, large, expensive, sort of highly engineered equipment. And they're some of the most visible pieces of equipment, right? We like to say that we're the closest point of contact to the end user and oftentimes to the customer. So, we take that job really, really seriously. And I think that we can develop a lot of customer sort of, points with being able to manage a lot of those things. So we like that stuff, right? Where one shipment is, it requires a double drop stretch, an RGN or something like that. And the next one is just, 3 or 4 transformers that need to be on site at a certain point in time. Each load is a little bit different, but you're constantly building some of those sort of habits, within your organization that are ultimately going to help you win.
Yeah. And that's what it is to me, man. It's like, this isn't, as me and one of my buddies constantly say, like, this isn't just a job. Like, this is my profession. This isn't a hobby. This is what I do. And, and I know, you might feel this way, but I know I feel this way. Like, it means something to me that my name's on the wall. It means something to me that it's my brand that's out there. And that's people's perception of the company that I'm trying to build. Because, I look at it as man, it like the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years, somebody from my company is going to be reaching out there. And I want to have as much of a positive brand association that I possibly can. Because at the end of the day, man, you can lose people for life based on the way that you operate and just that association that your company. I mean, I saw it so many times early on in my career. And now that again, it's my brand that's out there, I want to do as much as I can to have as much of a positive influence as the direction and kind of the perception of my company out there.
Yeah, I think maybe you've answered one of the questions of like, when is a good time, right? For maybe a seller, getting back to some of that topic. Well, when you're having that question and you're not adding that value or concern that you're diluting your brand, or you're trying something that you're uncomfortable with, like that might be a good time to, sort of have that conversation. Because you're right? Every day it's a thankless job. Right. When you do a great job, nobody's going to tell you that you did. It's just, that's what you were supposed to do. Right. That's what I'm paying you for. When you do a bad job, everybody knows about it. So
yep.
I think every day you have to really defend that brand, that logo that sits behind you, and make sure that you're bringing on the right people that are pushing in that direction, and get rid of the ones that, that aren't. Right. It's tough. It's tough, sort of recognize that. But, we found a way to do it, and like I said, we're enjoying the ride of it. As stressful as it can be sometimes, but we're enjoying it.
Dude, I want to, and I know we got to wrap up here, but like that just reminded me of a quote that I heard this morning. It was a Warren Buffett quote. It says, "It takes 20 years to build a reputation and 5 minutes to ruin it. If you think about that, you'll do things differently." And then he also has another one about, like he can handle people losing money, but if you ruin my reputation, I will ruin you. Essentially, Warren Buffett is savage. He's not that nice old man that he likes to portray. He's out there, he gets stuff done, but it's the truth, man. Your reputation's everything.
Your reputation is absolutely everything. And I say this all the time, right? If you're going to make mistakes, make them at 1,000,000 miles an hour, right? If you're working hard and you have the idea and the goals of the company in mind, I'm going to back you, to the day I die. But if you're ultimately messing with the reputation and the brand, right? Like that's just a non-starter. Those are the things that can bring you down in a quick second.
Dude, amen to that, man. Anthony, thank you so much, dude. This flew by. I knew it was going to. You guys got to go out there and connect with Anthony, follow his companies and everything. They're doing the right things out there, you guys. I'm very grateful to be able to have you on this show today, man. Thank you for joining. How does anybody reach out to you to find out more about what you guys got going on, man?
Yeah, no, I mean, it's 2025. If you want to find me, you can probably find me. There's LinkedIn. There's ways to find me, especially the ones that really want to. So I'm out there. But no, listen, Chris, this has been fantastic. It's so fun to see your growth, and I'm appreciative for you having me on here and talking a little bit of shop. We got to do this again sometime. It's a lot of fun.
Absolutely. Whenever you want, Anthony, you just let me know. We'll make it happen. But that is going to be it for today, ladies and gentlemen. As always, if you got value in what you heard, subscribe to the show. If you're feeling really ambitious after this one, which you should be, rank the show on iTunes and Spotify, because that's how your network is going to see value. Because if you saw it, chances are they're going to see it as well. I appreciate you guys. I love you guys. And we'll be talking to you soon. We don't have